By 8:12 on Friday morning, the $11 million client was no longer theirs. Not lost. Not confused. Not exploring options. Gone. I know because I was sitting in my parked truck outside a diner in Raleigh, watching rain crawl down the windshield, when my phone buzzed with the signed transfer confirmation. For 6 years, I had been the guy they forgot. Forgot to invite to leadership dinners. Forgot to copy on praise emails. Forgot my name in rooms where my work was being presented on giant screens. And finally, they forgot my bonus. Yeah. That didn't sit right. Let me rewind. I worked at Veyron and Holt, a mid-sized logistics consulting firm with expensive chairs, cheap coffee, and a leadership team that confused volume with intelligence. My title was Senior Client Operations Strategist, which sounded fancy enough to impress my aunt but not fancy enough to get me a window office. My actual job was simple: keep impossible clients from leaving. I translated panic into plans. I caught errors before they became lawsuits. I remembered birthdays, shipment patterns, contract clauses, and which CFO hated being called before 10. The biggest account I handled was Larkspur Medical Supply, an $11 million annual client that shipped hospital equipment across 7 states. They were demanding, precise, and allergic to excuses. Everyone hated dealing with them. Everyone except me. Their operations director, Hadley Voss, once told me, "You're the only person over there who doesn't make me want to throw my phone into a lake." I said, "That's going on my LinkedIn." She laughed. After that, whenever something went sideways, she called me directly. My boss, Crofton Vale, loved that arrangement as long as he could take credit for it. Crofton was the kind of man who wore cufflinks to Tuesday staff meetings and said, "Circle back," like it was a legal threat. He had silver hair, a permanent golf course squint, and a habit of resting one hand on the back of your chair while talking down to you. Not touching you, exactly. Just owning the space around you. Every quarter, he'd walk into the conference room late, slide into the head seat, and say, "All right, folks, where are we with Larkspur?" Then I'd speak for 20 minutes. Then he'd turn to the executives and say, "As I've been steering this relationship." I'd smile. That was my specialty. Swallow the pride. Show the teeth. Keep the room calm. My wife, Tamsin, could read that smile from across the kitchen. "You did the corporate hostage face again," she said one night as I loosened my tie by the fridge. "I have several faces. You have one. It says, I'm being professional because bail is expensive." She had a way of making the truth sound less heavy. Tamsin taught middle school science. She spent her days convincing 12-year-olds not to glue things to other things, then came home and listened to me describe grown adults doing roughly the same. When my father got sick the year before, she was the one who kept our house standing. Medical bills had thinned us out. Not destroyed us, just stretched everything tight enough to hum. So when Crofton announced a retention bonus tied to keeping Larkspur through renewal, I paid attention. $25,000. To Crofton, that was a weekend patio renovation. To us, it was breathing room. The renewal took 8 months. 8 ugly months. A warehouse strike in Ohio. A software failure in Memphis. A late-night call from Hadley where I sat in my garage at 1:40 a.m., laptop balanced on a paint bucket, rebuilding a distribution map while Tamsin slept upstairs. We saved the account. No, let me say that cleanly. I saved the account. At the renewal meeting, Hadley signed a 3-year extension. Crofton stood beside the conference room screen with his hands folded like a pastor at a country club funeral. "Larkspur remains with us," he said, "because we maintain executive-level trust." Hadley's eyes flicked to me. Just once. That was enough. 2 weeks later, bonus notices went out. Mine didn't. I waited 1 day. Then 2. On Wednesday, I emailed payroll. They sent me to HR. HR sent me to Crofton. Crofton invited me into his office at 4:45, which is when weak men schedule conversations they don't want witnessed. His office smelled like leather, printer toner, and fake cedar. He didn't ask me to sit. About the bonus, I said. He leaned back. Right. That. I waited. He tapped a pen against his desk. The executive team reviewed contribution levels, and while your support was appreciated, the bonus pool was allocated to client-facing leadership. I blinked once. Client-facing leadership, I repeated. Yes. Crofton, I was the point of contact for Larkspur for 8 months. He smiled, small and polished. You were support. Important support. But support. There it was. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a little blade slid neatly between the ribs. I said, Hadley calls me directly. And that, he said, is something we'll need to correct. I felt my jaw tighten, so I looked past him at the framed sailing photo behind his desk. A boat leaning into white water, everybody on it pretending they understood wind. He continued, You're a good worker, Oren. But you sometimes mistake proximity for authority. My name is Oren Pell. He knew that. He just liked getting it wrong. I gave him the smile. Understood. On the way out, his assistant, Jules Ketter, looked up from her desk. Jules had been at the company longer than half the executives and trusted none of them. She saw my face and quietly said, He did it, didn't he? I said, Forgot me. She looked toward his closed door. Funny how memory works upstairs. That night, Tamsin found me in the driveway, still sitting in the truck. Rain tapped the roof. The dashboard clock glowed 9:17. She opened the passenger door and climbed in without saying anything. Just sat beside me in her cardigan, hair clipped up, smelling faintly like dry erase markers and lavender soap. They took it? She asked. I nodded. She looked straight ahead. Then she said, So what do you know that they don't? That was why I loved her. Not burn it down. Not quit tomorrow. Just the better question. What did I know? I knew Larkspur's contract had a service continuity clause allowing reassignment of account management if executive interference created measurable risk. I knew Hadley had documented every delay Crofton caused by forcing updates through himself. I knew Crofton had missed 3 compliance review meetings but marked himself present in internal summaries. And I knew something else. 2 months earlier, Hadley had asked me quietly if I would ever consider joining a smaller firm if Larkspur moved its logistics consulting. I hadn't answered then. I answered the next morning. Not recklessly. Not emotionally. Carefully. I called Hadley from a bench outside the building where smokers gathered in winter and liars gathered all year. I need to ask you something, I said. She listened. I told her I had no authority to solicit anything while employed. I told her I would not misuse data. I told her exactly where the ethical lines were. Hadley said, Oren, we've already been reviewing alternatives. The only reason we stayed was you. I watched Crofton's car pull into his reserved spot, windshield shining. Hadley continued, If you leave, we leave. I just need it done clean. Clean became my obsession. For 3 weeks, I prepared. I documented every file I had created. I moved no proprietary documents. I forwarded nothing to myself. I asked Jules for copies of my own performance reviews, bonus plan language, and the account assignment chart. All proper. All boring. The most dangerous things in business are usually boring. Then I met with a boutique logistics firm called Northline Bridge. Their managing partner, Rhea Bellant, wore plain black glasses, asked exact questions, and didn't interrupt once. When I finished explaining Larkspur's needs, she said, "And why are you leaving Veyron and Holt?" I said, "Because I finally became too expensive to disrespect." She nodded like that was a full resume. Northline offered me a director role, a signing bonus, and authority over the Larkspur transition if they chose to move. Still, I didn't resign. Patience is only a weapon if you don't wave it around. The trigger came at the quarterly town hall. They held it in the glass atrium, with branded banners, tiny muffins, and the kind of upbeat music that makes layoffs feel possible. Everyone stood around holding paper coffee cups while Crofton floated from group to group, laughing too loudly. I was near the back with Jules when the CEO, Maribel Trent, announced the Larkspur renewal as the company's strategic win of the year. Crofton walked onto the small stage. Of course he did. He thanked the executive team. He thanked finance. He thanked the broader support staff who handled the details. Then he looked directly at me. "Details matter," he said, smiling. "But leadership closes." A few people glanced my way. My face did what it had been trained to do. Nothing. Then Maribel handed him a crystal award. A crystal award. For my account. The room clapped. Crofton raised it slightly, catching the atrium lights. That was the moment he caused his own downfall. Not by stealing money. Not by forgetting my bonus. By needing me to see it. After the applause faded, he stepped off stage and drifted toward me. "Good work on the details, Oren," he said. Jules looked down at her coffee like it had suddenly become fascinating. I said, quietly, "It's Oren." He chuckled. "Right. Don't be sensitive. There are rooms where anger would be wasted." That was one. So I nodded. "Sure, whatever. If you've ever smiled through disrespect just to survive one more day, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you believe quiet people are usually the ones paying the closest attention, subscribe to the channel. Because this is where things finally started changing. At 7:03 that evening, I sent my resignation. Professional. Brief. Effective immediately, with 2 weeks offered only for internal knowledge transfer unrelated to Larkspur. At 7:18, Hadley sent Veyron and Holt formal notice invoking the service continuity clause and beginning transition review. At 7:22, Northline Bridge received Larkspur's signed letter of intent. By morning, the $11 million client had moved. Not overnight, technically. Just while Crofton was sleeping. The confrontation happened at 9:10 in Conference Room B, the one with the flickering screen nobody fixed because clients never saw it. Crofton came in first, red around the collar. Maribel followed, holding a folder. Legal joined by phone. Jules sat in the corner with her notebook, face smooth as fresh paint. Crofton didn't sit. "What did you do?" he said. I folded my hands on the table. "I resigned." "You poached a client." "No. Larkspur exercised a contractual right after documented service concerns." His mouth tightened. "You expect us to believe this wasn't coordinated?" "I expect you to read the timeline." Maribel opened the folder. I watched her expression change page by page. Missed meetings. Altered summaries. Client complaints redirected away from leadership. Bonus plan language naming primary account retention contributor, not client-facing leadership. Crofton's voice got lower. "This is ridiculous." Hadley joined the video call at 9:24. She appeared on the screen in a navy blazer, calm as a judge. Maribel said, "Hadley, we value this relationship. We'd like to understand what happened." Hadley looked at Crofton, then at me. "What happened," she said, "is that your company built the relationship on Oren's labor and then removed his authority while taking credit for his results. That created risk for us. Crofton laughed once. Bad move. Hadley's eyes cooled. And Mr. Vale, she added, when my team raised concerns, you referred to Oren as back-office cleanup. In writing. The room went silent. Jules stopped writing. Maribel turned slowly toward Crofton. He opened his mouth, but nothing useful came out. That's the thing about people who weaponize tone. They panic when facts enter the room. By noon, Crofton was placed on administrative leave. By Wednesday, Maribel called me personally. Her voice had lost the stage polish. Oren, she said, getting my name right for the first time, I owe you an apology. I stood on the balcony outside Northline's office, watching traffic move under a clean blue sky. I appreciate that, I said. We reviewed the bonus issue. You were eligible. It should have been paid. Should have been? A pause. Will be, she said. Immediately. I looked through the glass at my new desk. Not a corner office. Not fancy. But mine. A space where people asked what I thought before repeating it louder. The payment is welcome, I said. But I'm not coming back. I understand. I believed she did. Too late, but still. 3 weeks later, the industry newsletter reported Crofton's departure as a leadership transition. That phrase does a lot of laundry. Jules sent me a text with a photo of his empty office. No caption. Just the sailing picture leaning against the wall, waiting to be boxed. I showed Tamsin that night while we sat at our kitchen table eating takeout noodles from cartons because celebration doesn't always need candles. She read the article, then looked at me over her chopsticks. You okay? I thought about that. I thought about 6 years of fake smiles. The wrong name. The stolen rooms. The bonus that became something bigger than money because disrespect always does. Then I thought about the signed deposit hitting our account, my father's medical bill marked paid, and Hadley's first email to my new address starting with, "Good to have you where you belong." Yeah, I said. I think I am. Tamsin smiled. Good. Because your corporate hostage face was getting old. I laughed for real then. Not loud. Just enough. A few months later, Northline held a client dinner. Small place downtown, brick walls, warm lights, servers who didn't hover. Hadley raised a glass and said, "To clean transitions and competent people." Everyone looked at me. For once, nobody stole the sentence that came next. I lifted my glass. To details, I said. Because details remember what powerful people forget.